Spring Black Friday is on at the Home Depot. Save on grills and patio sets that will be sure to bring your hosting game up a notch. Fire up your feast with help from the Home Depot and save on grills. Like the Next Grill 4-burner propane gas grill was $249, now in special buy for $199. Or give everyone the best seat in the yard with the Hampton Bay Mayfield Park 4-piece conversation set for only $399. Save on grills and patio sets with low prices guaranteed during Spring Black Friday only at the Home Depot. Now through April 22nd, while supplies last. Exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
Last night, you spent 2 hours deciding what to wear to the party. This morning, it'll take you 2 minutes to list it on Depop and make your money back. Just grab your phone, snap a few photos, and we'll take care of the rest. The sheer dress and platform heels you'll never wear again? There's a birthday girl searching for them right now. Your one-and-done look is about to pay for your next night out. Or at least the ride home. Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
Welcome to Academia Unlocked, a special series from BookTok for BookTok with Jack and Amy, where we take one classic work and explore it through a 4-part literary journey, moving from understanding the text to deep analysis to cultural interpretation and finally to collective reader meaning. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy, and we're longtime friends, readers, and co-hosts. And between the two of us, we have over 13 years of academic literary training. Our goal with this series is to bring academic-level literary discussion into a space that feels accessible, thoughtful, and genuinely curious, without losing the depth that makes these works so enduring.
Academia Unlocked isn't just about a book. It's about learning how to read, interpret, and question it in new ways. Think of this series as a stepping into a guided seminar where we explore not only what a story says, but how and why it continues to resonate across time. Every book is broken into 4 episodes, each building on the last.
In episode 1, we talk literary literacy at a high school level.
Episode 2 is our advanced analysis, where we shift into a college-level seminar.
Episode 3, we discuss the books in various forms of media.
Finally, we open it up to listener interpretation.
This is episode 1 of our Pride and Prejudice 4-part analysis.
And if you hear noise in the background, that's me with the fan. LA's in the middle of a heat wave. I don't understand it. Sorry, guys. I just gotta apologize with that.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Gotta survive.
You really do. I'm gonna see if I can at least, not have it blowing fan air right into the microphone. But that's where my face is. It's a struggle. We're talking about Pride and Prejudice. Did you ever think we'd talk about Pride and Prejudice on the podcast?
No.
Same.
Definitely not. Actually, I don't remember the last time I read Pride and Prejudice as a book.
Really?
Prior to this. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've actually read it.
I've read it yearly for about as long as I can remember, since mid-20s. Yeah, I read it. I go through my annual reread, and then I go into my annual, I must read every variation I can possibly read of this. That's normally
Which
how I
has
start
already
my year.
begun.
It's already happened, and we've wrapped it up, thank God. But we're here to talk about this book, this wonderful classic with you, and we are talking about this at a literacy level. We'll call it a high school level, so this is very approachable. And one thing we want to start with is, we call this segment 1, myth versus reality. So we are here to help break preconceived assumptions right off the bat, and we're going to reposition the novel before the analysis begins next week. So right now we are clearing out the junk. We're here to just start anew.
The goal of this episode is to help our listeners understand that the preconceived notion that Pride and Prejudice is a romance is false. The novel is actually about interpretation, misreading, misunderstanding, and ego. That should be obvious in the word pride in Pride and Prejudice.
And the prejudice, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not.
I mean, someone might be like, you're saying this isn't a romance? Yes, it is a romance. Pride and Prejudice is a romance. We're not stripping that completely away. It's just, like Amy said, it's in the title. So maybe it's not romance and romance. love and romance.
Right. It's not our modern understanding of a romance. It is commentary on society.
Yeah.
Commentary on
Women in society.
women in society, men in society, how they interpret each other based on appearance. Lots of fun shenanigans.
Yes. But before we get into those fun shenanigans, here are some questions that we want you guys just to keep in your head, keep fresh. So we're going to come back to this throughout. And the first one is, what do readers expect Pride and Prejudice to be? This is going to be a really difficult one because I think that it's so ingrained in our culture that even if you haven't read Pride and Prejudice, there's a chance you've seen the Keira Knightley version, the BBC version, any other version that exists. There's just so many.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah, Pride and Prejudice, a latter day retelling, which I will be watching and cracking up to. A Bollywood version of Pride and Prejudice. Like, there's just so many good ones. So it's going to be hard for you guys to, not just you guys, all of us, to just kind of remove that, right? And then another question we ask ourselves is, why has culture framed it primarily as a romance? It's going to be a good question to ask ourselves. And then finally, what deeper intellectual problem is Austen exploring? We've already kind of hinted at it, but now we're going to like aggressively tell you.
Now, everyone has a different relationship with Pride and Prejudice, and it's not accessible to everybody. For me personally, the BBC version, the 6-part miniseries, was first introduced to me at a young age as the thing you watch when you're sick. And so I always watched it when I was sick. And so it is very, very comforting. And I think readers often approach Pride and Prejudice expecting it to be a comforting romance. However, as we already said, Pride and Prejudice is not primarily a romance. It's a novel about how intelligent people misjudge reality. It's a study of ego and perception, and also it's a social experiment in how class shapes interpretation, which I think we already saw a little bit of in Wuthering Heights, but is even more pronounced in Pride and Prejudice. Really, what Austen, and by Austen we mean Jane Austen, is doing, she's staging a psychological puzzle about perception. The question is not, will Elizabeth and Darcy fall in love, but rather, how do smart people convince themselves they are right when they are wrong?
And why is that not a question we're not asking ourselves all the time?
Every day. Yeah,
every
it's so true.
time. I always like remember You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, and there's a part where he's trying to like win her over and she loves Pride and Prejudice, and he goes, is Elizabeth proud and Darcy prejudice, or is Darcy proud and Elizabeth prejudice? And I don't know where it goes beyond that conversation, but I hear it all the time in my head, just Tom Hanks saying that.
I've also asked myself this question before, and this is the first time I read the book, and I was like, both are both.
Yeah, it's like that cartoon meme where we look at each other. Both is good. What do people think about when they think Pride and Prejudice? Honestly, I feel like this is one of those classic, amazing structure. Like, we all look towards Pride and Prejudice as the almost original enemies to lovers, right? She hates him, although he doesn't hate her. And that's actually like every other romance book nowadays, right? We call that angry puppy to lovers. And that's like one of the initial reactions we have. Also, Darcy is reflected as the perfect romantic archetype. I am guilty of this. Darcy is the original brooding, almost morally gray guy, but you find out he has a heart of gold. Like, Darcy is the archetype for so many MMCs to this very day. And ultimately, another thing that I don't feel like people are even aware of when they're reading this is the historical escapism that they're experiencing. You're able to step out of yourself and out of your shit show of reality that is this current landscape that we're in, and you're able to go into this idolized, whimsical world, because if that was the true case, and we don't want to be there, for so many reasons we do not want to go back there. Obviously, racism, sexism, peeing in pots, like there's just things that we don't want to do.
So many reasons.
I love watching historical documentaries and seeing how the men and women had to pee during these big parties, and they would just like go to a little corner and like pee in a pot that had Napoleon's face in it. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, a lot of like the chamber pots would have Napoleon's face on them, and then so that you could like pee on Napoleon. And this is Pride and Prejudice is set during the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah. Oh, I did not know that.
So yeah, like when you know those two facts, like, you know what I mean? When you know these two things, you have to ask yourself which one of the sisters did it. which one peed on his face. So, and then finally kind of like, I want to summarize this though, before we continue, that Darcy as a brooding romantic hero has turned into its own lore. It has turned into its own pop culture myth that has taken on a life of its own. I get it. I'm feral for Darcy.
Oh, I am too.
Yeah.
It's in its own way, it's like the Mandela effect, where everybody collectively remembers it incorrectly.
Yeah.
That's what this book is.
Although, as I was rereading it, I mean, as I do every year, I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with it. Like, there's...
Now, as I alluded to earlier, what this book actually is, it's a comedy of interpretive error. It really is so funny and witty, and not only in its errors, but also its critique of society, its critique of classism and how class influences how we see the world. It's also a study of how, through self-reflection, through self-recognition, people can grow morally, and that people should be afforded that opportunity. One of the famous quotes from this book that sums this up perfectly is, quote, "Till this moment, I never knew myself." It's not about a romantic resolution. It's an intellectual awakening that I think Jane Austen wanted society to go through.
People don't give credit how funny this book is.
I forgot just how funny it was.
Every year I laugh at it. I have a calendar in my bathroom. It's my Jane Austen calendar that my uncle gave to me for Christmas. But there's like so many one-liners that just hit, like
so good.
Mrs. Bennet just like freaking out, and then Mr. Bennet going, "Well, let us pray that you go before me, that I outlast you." Banger after banger.
So many.
Now, why is it that these misunderstandings persist? And I really want to emphasize this, that we have to understand this is a misunderstanding. And in order for us to like go forward with this conversation, like we all have to be in agreement here. We're not saying that it's not a romance. We're saying that it's so much more than that. There's a lot more things going on behind the scenes. I mean, just looking at Mr. Bennet and the story and the social criticism behind Mr. Bennet is interesting within itself. Like, it's not just about Elizabeth, Darcy, Kitty. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much more to it. A brief narrative pause. Stay with us.
Earlier this spring, my mom and I refinanced her mortgage, and it made me realize I really need to simplify my finances. And I can do that with Monarch.
Let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. Monarch has one dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more scattered logins. Just accounts, investments, property, and more all in one place.
Get your first year of Monarch for half off. That's just $50 with promo code BookTok. BookTalk.
Monarch has helped me every single month when it reports back on how much I'm actually spending on things like apps.
I love the cash flow visualization tool because I didn't realize how much money I was spending on acai.
One of my favorite things about Monarch is the weekly AI recap that catches the spending spike before it becomes a problem.
It's like having a financial advisor in your pocket. Anytime you want, you can ask it things like, how has my spending changed lately? Or am I on track to hit my savings goal?
The best thing that Monarch does is it helps you split the bills. Scan a receipt and Monarch splits up the items and prices them automatically. Then share a link or QR code with your group so everyone can claim their item and settle up. No more calculator apps.
Use code BookTalk at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50.
That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code BookTalk. BookTalk.
So why is it that we as a society kind of glaze past those other parts and we always come back to these really romantic, just kind of forward or two-dimensional, really, understanding of this book? Part of that are the film adaptations and the fact that romance is the primary story that they tell. Not just the primary story, the only story that they tell. It's not, they don't touch on everything else the way that the book does. Because the romance is so good. The romance in this book is chef's kiss, fantastic, 10 out of 10. I'll have 20 more, please. But so is everything else that's happening. So is the social criticism. So is the social commentary and everything else that's going on. But the film adaptations just don't get to that. And we'll cover that more when it's episode 3. But the irony in the book, readers end up reading that as sincere to the modern audience. I mean, we talk about how funny this book is, but the reason why it's so funny is because of how tongue-in-cheek it is. And the British know irony. Like, the British are dry and they're funny. And this is one of those, like, even back in the day, they got the dry, funny humor going on. And I feel like women probably had to be, in my opinion, even more funny and even drier and more witty because, you know, they have to stick around, you know, they have to keep men on their toes or stay alive. So I think that's often missed on the modern audience.
Yeah, I completely agree. The irony is just so good. And I think it's because if read out of context, it's innocent.
Yeah.
But within context, it is like talking shit.
Yeah. Do you know exactly which one you're looking at? Like
Yeah.
you're looking for? Oh, damn. You always impress me with this because you'll be like, it is in this chapter in this page where it's like, you haven't memorized that. How do you even know?
Okay, so this is literally the last chapter of the book, first paragraph, because when I was listening to this, I just could not stop laughing. Okay, this is chapter 19. Happy for all her maternal feelings was the day on which Mrs. Bennet got rid of her two most deserving daughters. With what delighted pride she afterwards visited Mrs. Bingley and talked of Mrs. Darcy may be guessed. I wish I could say, for the sake of her family, that the accomplishment of her earnest desire in the establishment of so many of her children produced so happy an effect as to make her a sensible, amiable, well-informed woman for the rest of her life. Though perhaps it was lucky for her husband, who might not have relished domestic felicity in so unusual a form that she still was occasionally nervous and invariably silly. I just love that so much.
It's so freaking funny. And like, rather than just saying, you know, oh, she's never changed.
Yeah.
It's not just richer in the sense that, oh, the words are pretty. It just depicts her energy more. It shows how scattered mind she is. It shows how all over the place, and you would kind of have hope, and she comes back to reality that, you know, she is who she is. But
it also comments on Mr. Bennet at the same time.
Yes.
And just his nature as well. It's just,
it's so
good.
Freaking funny. And finally, you know, I totally understand why this next part might evade or kind of not pollute, but it clouds people's understanding of the book, and that is the marriage plot. And the fact that the first thing that this book says is a man with a good fortune must be in want of a wife. It sets up the precedence of like, this is going to be about marriage, and you focus on the marriage, and, you know, Mrs. Bennet's talking about marriage. Everyone's worried about marriage, but it also hides the deeper psychological structure that's happening within this novel. Yes, marriage is in the foreground, but there's a lot more happening in the background.
Knowing that, what's important then as you read the book yourself is to look for the following patterns. One is what is perceived versus reality. Two is the use of pride as emotional defense against others, against what's happening, against what's being said, etc. And finally, social performance versus authentic identity. And I feel like that's something in the modern age we should especially be able to understand if you equate it to the internet persona we put on through social media versus who we are when there are no cameras and phones.
Yeah, you made a good point that what we see online is not what we see in person, which made me think of the Lizzie Bennet diaries, because that's kind of like part of the whole spiel. And yeah, it's so good. You're not going to hear us stop saying that. So anyone who's here listening, hopefully you like Pride and Prejudice. So now we're going to go on to segment 2, and that is to discuss the historical context and very important things like Napoleon and chamber pots. So that's, you know, we got to focus on that. And the reason why we do this is to help provide a framework that explains the character behaviors and to explain what's at stake.
Because it is true that the emphasis on marriage, the horror at Lydia's actions, or Mr. Bennet's attitude and sense of humor, we can't understand why those are high stakes.
Yeah.
Without understanding the historical context of the moment.
Yep. And it's such an important moment, like the Regency era, which we'll get into. Like, it's a very just specific amount of time. I think it's like only 17 years. We'll get into it.
So some of the key questions we're going to address when we talk about the historical context include what social realities shaped the novel? Why does marriage carry such urgency? And maybe if you've watched Bridgerton, you kind of get the context, but maybe not, because Bridgerton is its own special thing.
Yeah.
And third, how does Austen's genre influence reader expectations?
Yeah. Bridgerton season 1, it's, oh no, we were caught kissing in the bushes. We must get married. I'm ruined. Don't, you guys are going to fight for my honor. Season whatever, it's like, we're just fucking before marriage. Okay, I was generous. So the Regency era was only 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because that was like named for the Prince Regent who ruled at the time while his father struggled with his own mental illness. So that's the Regency era. And hey, what a time to be alive. Napoleon, Empire wastes, peen and chamber pots. Dancing was a 30-minute event. Like when you would go and dance with someone, you're dancing with them for 30 minutes.
So to have the first 2 dances is an hour long. Even I didn't realize that until this read through.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long one. So like when Mr. Collins is like, I will claim your dance.
You're
like,
first too. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, oh God, I don't want to spend time with you like that.
Yeah.
Like I love you, but I don't know if I want to dance with you for an hour. And it's like not even just like dancing. It's kind of dancing and coming back to continue a conversation a little bit more.
For 30 minutes.
Yeah. But so in this Regency era, social economy is everything. And you can look at social economy being that marriage equals financial survival. And that's not just the women, but for the men too. Example of this is that the Bennet's estate is entailed away from the daughters. Quote, the business of her life was to get her daughters married. So Mrs. Bennet becomes rational within context. I talked about this in my bachelor's degree. I did a thesis there too called The Female Alteration. And talking about like part of this is that women had to alter the way that they viewed situations in order to survive their moment and survive what's going on in their reality. And I used Pride and Prejudice quite a bit. And Mrs. Bennet was one in the sense that survival meant my daughters have to be married. Ideally, one of them gets married well enough that I can go live with them. And then the other alteration that she has to wrap her head around is when Lydia gets married with Wickham, and then Wickham becomes her dearest Wickham. Well, it's like, well, what else is going to happen? There's no other option than to embrace him.
Right. Despite him being a gamester and having debts everywhere and not loving her.
The 2005 adaptation has one line that I haven't seen from the others that I respect so much. And she's like freaking out about Lydia getting married. And then I think it's either Elizabeth or Jane goes, is that all you think about? And she says, you have $5 and tell me if that's what takes up your mind. And I was like, damn, Mrs. Bennet.
It's true. It's so true. So just for clarification's sake, for anyone who doesn't understand what it means for an estate to be entailed, I know we get it from the context of the book, but I think it's worth defining clearly that basically legally, it's predetermined how the property of the family is given over generation after generation. And unfortunately, in the Bennet's case, the daughters are not allowed to inherit, which is why it ultimately goes to Mr. Collins.
Yeah.
And that's why Mrs. Bennet is so unhappy. And that's why Mrs. Bennet is so focused on marriage, because if Mr. Bennet dies, they're all homeless.
And I'm sure even though Mrs. Bennet is meant to come off as silly and ridiculous, it's said that over and over again. In the time when people are reading this, guaranteed someone knew someone who their mama is only concerned about marriage, who they're in a precarious situation. You know what I mean? Like, I can bet that someone was reading this during this era and was like, oh my God, they remind me of my mom or something like that.
And even though Mrs. Bennet is painted as silly, I'm sure there's also a level of pity that comes along with it, that you're forced into a situation where you have to think about this all the time.
Yeah. She's almost hyperbolic in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Okay, so also this is a novel of manners. The whole thing is about manners. It's about what you do that is correct, that is judged. I mean, look at Jane for, you know, like she's not putting herself out there enough, so therefore she's being judged, that she's only being polite. But social interactions equal power negotiations. So let's all take that in. social interactions in Pride and Prejudice, that is the equivalent for power negotiations. Things are being actively negotiated in these interactions. An example of this, the Meryton Assembly as a social ranking system. We all know this very famous line when Darcy refuses to dance with anyone, especially Elizabeth, and he says, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." What does this establish right off the bat? Reputation. I mean, like, he's coming in big dick energy, like high on his own high horse, and is like, I am too good for this place. I don't need to dance. At one point in a different scene, he even tells Mrs. Bennet, and I hate using the word, but he says savages can dance too, are also good at dancing. Again, don't like saying the word, but that's what he says. It also established in this one line that Darcy's got some mad pride happening.
Yeah.
That someone can't even be handsome enough to tempt him. Well, who is he to think that he needs to be tempted? That, you know, they need to be beautiful enough to even tempt him.
The other thing that this accomplishes is it creates a bias within the reader against Darcy. It makes Elizabeth biased against Darcy, which is part of the whole plot, right? They have to be at odds. And so I think there's also room for debate. Is Darcy like fully in a place of pride when he says this? Or is it because, as he explains later, I don't know anyone here.
Yeah.
Why, like, this is a cover for him.
Yes.
So that he doesn't have to undergo the awkwardness of dancing with women he doesn't know for 30 minutes at a time.
Because what's his ego going to do, right? Like, he's this handsome man, tall. They've established that he's tall, that he's rich. And what is he going to say? Like, girls make me nervous. Like,
Right.
Like, he's got a touch of the tism. And, you know, he's an introvert and he doesn't like it. And he feels very uncomfortable with crowds. And I bet noise annoy him too.
Overstimulated.
He's overstimulated, and he's not going to say that to Bingley. He's not going to be like, hey, I need my earmuffs or something. Like, I need to go, I need a breather. He's just going to be like, no, she's ugly.
Yeah, right. Because it comes across as in character for him.
Yep.
And it's an easy out for him, especially if he thinks no one's listening.
Yep. So we're going to shift a little bit here on how Austen writes this novel and how it's her innovation, really, when it comes to writing, and something that I feel like writers strive to achieve to this day. And that is the free, indirect discourse. So this is in third person, in the most part, Elizabeth's third person, you could say. But at the same time, so the narration aligns with Elizabeth's thoughts, right?
A good example is the quote that I just read a little bit earlier, right? It's making commentary on how silly Mrs. Bennet is, but those are Elizabeth's thoughts of her own mother. She fails to, what the narration does at the same time is like, well, yeah, your mother's silly, but your father is also equally like drawn to it, and he wouldn't know how to live without it. And it's not necessarily true that Elizabeth thinks that of her own father. And you see that a lot as it flits in and out of people's understanding of the moment throughout the entire novel.
And there's times where it's like more distant too of her, and it kind of goes a little bit more broad, and you can see when she's more critical of herself. The text is a little bit more critical of her, especially when she becomes ashamed later on, when she discovers the truth about Wickham. It's very much the text and the narrative style grows with her growth, which is done very, very well.
Yes.
So things we want you to recognize as we wrap up this segment in particular is politeness versus authenticity. So who's just being polite for the sake of being polite? Who's being authentic? I think I'm coming back to Jane as a great example of that. She's trying to be authentic, but she's also trying to be polite because she's so reserved. And then you have Charlotte, who's in the corner telling Elizabeth, be like, damn, if she wants to lock that down, she's got to throw herself a little bit more at him. And she's not wrong.
She's not.
But that's like, I mean, everyone is both a different like social presentation and who they actually are. And then the other one is reputation as currency. Another great example of that is the fact that the Bennets, they're poor, but not only that, they're embarrassing. So not only would it be bad for Darcy or Bingley to marry either of the sisters, but it's embarrassing because of their mother, because of her sisters, even her father. And that's why it's such a big deal later on when Darcy is like, hey, I am willing to marry you, even though your family sucks and And she's like, the hell? And Elizabeth has to come to that realization that yes, her family does suck. And it is almost worse than her own poverty, because poverty, you can't blame them for that. You don't have to hold them accountable for being born into an unfortunate situation. You absolutely can hold her family accountable for their actions, which is why, in many ways, it's what condemned her, like the Darcy's view on her more so than the lack of wealth.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Wow, what a moment. What an episode. Anyway, here's some ads. I have the most complicated period ritual just to make sure that I am comfortable and I don't have any accidents. And at the end of the day, I'm not comfortable and I still have accidents. I am so happy that I have finally made the jump to Knix because I can sleep so much easier when I'm on my period now with their leak-proof underwear.
Knix, that's Knix, has completely changed how I feel about my period. Their leak-proof technology not only looks and feels like regular underwear, but it washes like regular underwear, and they have a range of absorbencies because if you're like me, my period keeps changing. The heavier days are heavier and shorter, and I don't know what to expect. With up to 6 super tampons worth of absorption, I'm totally covered.
Plus, Knix has patent-bonded edges to prevent side leaks. We all know about those dreaded side leaks. They are the bane of my existence. Their underwear is buttery soft, stretchy fabric and cuts like thong, bikini, boy shorts, high rise, and more. Their thong has seriously changed everything. I wear that on my last day of the period where like I just need something for the gym. Pad doesn't feel comfortable. Tampons don't feel comfortable. Knix, game changer.
I swear by their boy shorts for overnight on heavy nights. I even wore those boy shorts under my dress during my engagement photo shoot. They were lifesavers. Head to Knix.com and you'll see why we love Knix. Use code BookTalk, that's BOOKTALK, for 15% off your order.
Get leak-proof undies, amazing bras, and more. That's KNIX.com using code BookTalk, BOOKTALK. Knix.com. Struggling to find the right metabolic wellness support, even when you're doing everything right, has been one of the most frustrating things for me in my health journey.
I've tried other metabolic wellness support providers, and I often feel rejected rather than supported by the process.
That's because Brello is focused on long-term health, longevity, and performance, not quick fixes.
Brello is designed for people who want a more sustainable approach to their metabolic wellness support. Their support helps you focus on habits, education, and structure alongside provider oversight.
Getting my GLP-1 through Brello has been so easy. They make it so effortless, and they provide all the support I need through their app.
Their app is one of a kind in my book because it allows you to track progress, manage reminders, and stay on top of renewals. And if you're like me, managing the renewals is the hardest part.
Everything is managed online, making it easier to stay consistent over time, and medications are delivered to your door. They're so transparent with their pricing with one flat monthly cost. Go to BrelloHealth.com to see if you qualify and explore their GLP-1 plans, starting at $133 per month for your first 3 months, plus access to their app, community, and wellness classes. That's BRELLO health.com.
Any information provided is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional medical consultation, diagnosis, or treatment. All patients must consult with a healthcare provider prior to the prescription or dispensing of any medication, which will be done only pursuant to a valid prescription. Compounded drug products are not FDA approved, and the FDA does not evaluate their safety, effectiveness, or quality. Patients are encouraged to discuss the risks, benefits, and appropriateness of any medications, including compounded products, with their healthcare provider before use. We now go into segment 3, and this expands on what we were just talking about. And really, the focus is, how are we meant to read this novel? What is the scaffolding by which we read this novel so that we don't get lost in the romance part? As Jack alluded to before, Elizabeth's perspective and her interpretation of circumstance influences the narration, and it also influences our interpretation of what's going on. If that's the case, then when is the narration actually reliable, and how does structure influence our judgment as readers? So going back to this idea of free indirect discourse that Jack mentioned, it's easy to think Elizabeth is objective because we're on her side. She's been slighted by this man and who's uppity, and who cares if he has 10,000 pounds a year? But really what it's achieving is we are sharing her bias, not only against Darcy, but everybody else around her. Why else do we fall for Wickham? Why else do we think Wickham's a good man? We think Wickham's a good man because Elizabeth thinks Wickham is a good man. So what we have to come to realize is that there are moments where we're engaging with Elizabeth's interpretation of a moment versus actual narrative truth. And I think there are times where it shifts back and forth between interpretation and narrative truth. And we as readers have to really ask ourselves, which one are we engaged with at what time?
I feel like the description of her father changes throughout. And I think that's one of the best ways where you can see her interpretation versus what ends up becoming the truth and her acceptance of the truth. In the beginning, her father is like this dry, clever man, and he just like her and him just kind of like always have a very tongue-in-cheek, roll their eyes at everyone relationship. But then it becomes like you get more information of, well, he married their mom because he was only interested in her looks. And then he didn't even try to even be like that good of a husband. And he didn't really worry about his finances until it was too late, which means regardless of having a boy or a girl, he should have been worried about finances. And, and the fact that he is reckless with letting Lydia go join Brighton with the soldiers. Like, these are moments where I feel like you can see her narration becomes closer to the truth, especially after Darcy points it out to her.
Yes. I think another really good example is with Lydia herself. Oftentimes, the narrator allows Lydia to speak for herself without adding interpretation. One of my favorite moments is when Elizabeth and Jane come back from being away from the family and they meet Lydia and Kitty in Meryton. And Lydia's like, oh, we are so excited. We're going to treat you to lunch. But actually, we just spent all of our money. So will you please lend me the money?
Yep.
And then later on, she tells everybody at dinner, and we were so wonderful. We treated them to lunch.
Yep.
Like, there's no commentary on what Lydia's doing, but we as the reader know, like, this bitch. This is such a dumb 15-year-old.
I know. It's like, and she was taken advantage of. I hate. I mean, again, we'll save this for episode 3, how all of these interpretations of her and variations kind of make her look like a little bit of a villain, where it's like, or she was groomed.
Yeah, I mean, yes. And also very naive.
Because she was groomed. She was a child.
Right. But just in general, like, as the youngest, no one took the time to say, stop being dumb.
Yeah.
They indulged in her naivety. They indulged in her whims rather than holding her accountable.
Her dad had checked out at that point. Jane was, Mrs. Bennet's pride and joy. Elizabeth was too clever for her. Mary too drab for her. Pious, you're right. And then Kitty, and then Lydia happened really quickly. And then you also have the fact that Lydia is very much like their mother. And so suddenly their mom gets a child that's pretty and loves to gossip and is just like her. She gets her own little best friend. At the same time, her dad's like, I am so over this. I don't want to be a part of this parenting situation. So it does come as a very unfortunate circumstance that Lydia grew up in. She did not grow up in a household that would have supported her smart decisions. So to continue the narrative truth, another way of looking at it is, how do we read what's going on? We, the reader, we, the narrators of this book. And that is the social scenes that are happening, because this book is a lot of social scenes. The majority of the big stuff happens at social gatherings. And the fact that these social gatherings are essentially battlegrounds. Every interaction negotiates power. There is always something happening within these balls. So we have the Netherfield ball, where Darcy's shifting perception, at least we start to catch wind of it, of how he views her, although you can catch wind of it a little bit earlier on, like especially when she comes and takes care of her sister. But this is like probably his biggest proclamation, where Miss Bingley is just trying to be like, and whose eyes have captured your attention? Anyway, so he says to her at one point that Elizabeth is, quote, one of the handsomest women of my acquaintance. And we all swoon. And that's quite a ways from she's tolerable.
But not enough to tempt me.
Nope.
Another interaction that negotiates power is Darcy's letter to Elizabeth mid-story. And this is the turning point of all turning points, right? It's right after Darcy's proposed. Elizabeth has said, no, you're an idiot, and accuses him of a bunch of stuff. And what Darcy's letter does is it opens him up as a character, but also challenges all of the bias that we have engaged in with Elizabeth towards Darcy, towards Wickham, towards all of the situations they share in common. And what it does is there's before the letter and after the letter, right? You have an understanding of the world before the letter, and then you have a completely different understanding after the letter. And you have to recalibrate as a reader just as much as Elizabeth does.
It's so true. It's the narration in everything shifts that moment, right? Like that is the second where we have to then go about everything completely differently. You know, we have to view Wickham differently. We have to view her family differently. Elizabeth does not get to live her life without her own narrative of her own life being shifted.
Yeah, I mean, it's even true with Jane, right?
Yeah.
Because Darcy flat out says, I encouraged Bingley away from Jane because she seemed uncaring or just as into him as she was into anybody else.
Yep.
Whereas Elizabeth is like adamant that Jane was obviously madly in love with Bingley.
Yeah.
And so Elizabeth basically makes herself sick in this process of laboring over what Darcy has said and re-examining everything she's gone through since meeting him, every interaction, everything about her family, that her illness is almost like a necessary part of her transformation.
Yeah. I mean, we all love that letter, but it's funny because I feel like her feelings start to shift before she even sees Pemberley. And like obviously Pemberley kind of does a number on like, well, you know what? Maybe I can find love. Maybe I do love this. Maybe I give him a chance. But even before that, her opinions of him were shifting. And I think it speaks volumes on the type of character she is and how well she does blend with Darcy, in the sense that, you know, that letter kind of warms her up to him, you know, and it's not just like oh, your poor sister. It's also the way that he views her family and that truth, and that she can then see what he also sees. Like, it's stuff that she's seen this in her family her entire life. Now it's having to hold that mirror, and something about it, she's like, ooh, warm me up for you. I like it.
Maybe in some way, Elizabeth has had to learn to tolerate her family.
Yeah.
Because everybody else tolerates them. And Darcy is the first person to really call them out in a way that maybe if Elizabeth were, you know, not related, she would want to call them out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also, I don't want to say this incorrectly, but I'm probably going to, is that little bit of a level of like, oh, my family is ridiculous and he did want me. Like, how much did he actually, like, he must have really cared about me. If I can go home, look at how insane my family is, be just as embarrassed, and say, oh, he must have really cared about me.
It's true.
You also have various conversations that happen throughout this novel, and the different conversations and the different confrontations really set up a precedence of what's going on and how to view this narrative. Lady Catherine is a great example of this because we see her earlier on, like early mid, you know, like not like right before the midway point. And we meet her and we get this like idea of Lady Catherine who has opinions on water closets, who has opinions on how to pack. And, you know, I would be a great pianist had I decided to learn how to play. So everything she says is very much something for Elizabeth to roll her eyes at. It's nothing that she keeps, that she thinks too much on, until the very end where Lady Catherine gets wind that maybe there's a connection between Elizabeth and Darcy. And she tells Elizabeth, like, you better get the hell off of my nephew. He's going to marry my daughter. Like, who are you? You're just some country bumpkin. And Elizabeth says, quote, he is a gentleman. I am a gentleman's daughter. So far we are equal. And that is something that Elizabeth not only just says in this moment to piss her off, but it's something that she has to accept to be true in herself. So she kind of had this whole deconstruction moment, right? In the beginning, the narrative that she told herself and what we read was very much her kind of being above everyone. Like she was very much just kind of, she had her own pride, right? She was more clever than anyone else. She didn't care about things as much as everyone else did. And then it turned into, holy shit, I was wrong about Wickham. I'm a horrible judge of character. My sister's an idiot. She went and eloped. My father is actually lazy. Oh my God, what's going on? And then this is a moment where she's starting to get her agency back within this hierarchy of social class by reiterating, he is a gentleman, I am a gentleman's daughter. So far, we are equal. I think about that line a lot.
I think it also, what I love about some of these big conversations that Elizabeth has with Lady Catherine, with Darcy when she's turning him down, with Mr. Collins when she's turning him down. I think one of the reasons modern readers are so drawn to Elizabeth as a character, and we enjoy Elizabeth as a character, is because she might be prideful, but she always stands up for herself and knows her worth.
Yep.
And the language about it changes, right? With Mr. Collins, with Mr. Darcy early on, it's like, how dare you offend me? Whereas now it's like, we're no different. But all of those conversations reflect on a strong woman who uses her voice, which probably wasn't very normal at the time.
Or was normal. Here's the thing. It's the way that we see and read a clever woman today. I don't want to say that there aren't enough clever women or something like that, but, you know, even when we read Elizabeth today and you go through everyone's like, which Jane Austen character are you? Everyone loves to say Elizabeth, but very rarely do you get an Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that there's this moment of like, we want to be her. I'm just so curious. Like, I don't know. I wasn't alive at the time. You know, I can't tell you. But like, she was revolutionary, but I wonder how revolutionary she was. Or is this one of those archetypes that every woman wants to see themselves as?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Which Pride and Prejudice character, if you were going to be like, for real? Or maybe not Pride and Prejudice, any Jane Austen character.
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest.
I need to think about it. I asked you a question and I don't have an answer for you. I don't think you fit Regency.
Me or you?
You. Oh, you. I already know which one I am. What?
Well, now I'm offended.
You're not Emma.
No, I'm not Emma.
You're not Persuasion. You're not Northanger Abbey.
I actually haven't read Mansfield Park or Northanger Abbey.
I read Northanger Abbey forever ago. I think I read Mansfield Park in a fever dream. Sense and Sensibility, it's been a long time.
I might be the older sister.
I can
in
see
Sense and Sensibility.
I can see that. From what I can remember, that feels right.
Yeah. Mary Ann's the younger sister. It doesn't matter. We're here to talk about Pride and Prejudice. Let's move on.
Okay. Do you know which character I am out of all Jane Austen?
Are you going to say Elizabeth?
I didn't. Look, I know I said every girl thinks that they're Elizabeth.
It's just like everyone thinks they're a Gryffindor, but they're not really. What are you, Jack? A Gryffindor.
No, I'm a Slytherin. I'm a Slytherin. I'm a snake. I'm a slippery snake. But am I wrong?
What?
Am I wrong with being Elizabeth, though?
No, you are Elizabeth. You are Elizabeth.
In my younger years, I fought and defended myself of being Emma because I loved Emma way more than I loved Elizabeth originally. In high school, Emma was my girl. We'll get to that in 11 weeks.
I was going to say, Emma's a little bit of a...
Yeah, I know. And I loved it. Circle back in 9-10 weeks.
Okay.
We'll cover it then.
More like 40 weeks.
40 weeks, yeah.
Insert sponsored subplot here.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You know those friends who support your preference for podcasts over music on road trips? That's the energy State Farm brings to insurance. With over 19,000 local agents, they help you find the coverage that fits your needs. So you can spend less time worrying about insurance and more time enjoying the ride. Download the State Farm app or go online at statefarm.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
I get so many headaches every month.
It could be chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those who have 14 or fewer headache days a month. Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor. Visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
So now we're going to go into our next segment, and that is really for us to discuss the characters and the whole ecosystem within the characters and the dynamics that's happening here. And some of the key questions that we're going to ask ourselves here are, who interprets others accurately? And the answer to that is probably none. How does class shape behavior? Quite a bit. And which characters expose social norms? Arguably all.
So, as we've alluded a lot to with Elizabeth, she is very observant because the narration follows her observations, but she's also very biased. She adds her own color and interpretation to what's going on around her. She is intellectually confident, right? She's very self-assured in any social setting with whomever she interacts. She feels very comfortable no matter what the circumstances are.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, she is blind to her own ego.
Yeah, I feel like she's also a great example of how class shapes behavior, because Elizabeth and Jane are meant to be the more poised of the Bennet sisters, but she also walked alone through mud to walk into someone's house and to go take care of her sister. You know what I mean? Like, not only is that dangerous, but that's also rude. Like, you know, your shoes are all muddy. You're now walking through someone's home. And, you know, like, that does shape who she is, too. Like, she might be poised, but she is not exempt from her lower social actions, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite quotes of Elizabeth that I think sums this up pretty well is, "I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine."
Yep.
Speaking of Darcy. So it's like she knows she's got pride, but she doesn't understand how her pride colors everything she does and she sees and she responds to.
She's like when you go to therapy and you already know the answer.
Mm.
And you're like, I can tell you exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And you're just like,
but I still don't want to change.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, you think you've like beaten the therapist, or you're like,
yeah,
why do I need the therapy? Because I already know why I do what I do.
Right. I know lots of people like that.
I know, but you just go and you still talk to them about it, and then you do it over and over and over again. Eventually a breakthrough happens.
Eventually.
I was about to say beat a dead horse, and then I saw someone online of like, how can you say the same thing but without killing the horse? You don't want to over-bake a sourdough or a double bake a sourdough.
You don't want to overprove a sourdough.
Yeah. So another character, shockingly, Fitzwilliam Darcy. So Darcy himself, he is socially powerful. He walks into the room and he knows he is the most powerful one there. In all of the retellings that I have read, I forget how much the fact that he is the nephew of an earl and how much that impacts everything. I don't think that she touches on it as much as she does, probably she being Austen, probably because, you know, she didn't want to be insulting any earls around here or anything like that. But like, he walks into a room and he knows, like, he is part of aristocracy. Like, he is the most powerful person in this room, most likely. And that means, though, is that he is not going to be able to interpret others accurately. His class shapes his behavior automatically by thinking that he's better than everyone else. And that then causes him to be very emotionally rigid. There's a reason why, sorry, British, but there's like a, you know, reputation of, you know, kind of being a little bit more rigid and cold. Not you Brits, we love you guys, but Darcy, though, he is very rigid. I mean, at the end, it's, you know, they say that Elizabeth will be good for him because she'll help loosen him up and he'll help like sturdy her, and which, like, I agree with. Then that one side of me is like, why does he need a woman to loosen himself up? But I'm like, no, I love it. Don't, no, Jack, shh, Don't let that brain speak. We're not letting her talk. She can be saved for somewhere else. We're not doing that here. But the reason why we do love Darcy and why I think we ultimately come back to him over and over again is that he learns humility. He learns to humble himself. He learns that he was in the wrong. He tries to do better when he meets the gardeners. He is very much aware of trying to make amends, like to show to Elizabeth that he doesn't care that they live in Cheapside, that they are not a lady or a lord or a gentleman, and he can make an effort. And we love a man who grovels from the get-go. And it goes from like his initial original proposal, against my will, I ardently admire and love you. And you're like, bro, you had that half right. You had that halfway there. Like, you did not need to include that first part. And then towards the end, you have him saying, like, if your feelings had changed since last whenever, speak now, or don't let me continue suffering. And it's like, now that's how you do a proposal. Grovel.
Yeah, so true. So true. But I will say, it is easy to get lost in this idea. And I do think that this happens in other romances where the MMC is like, I've tried to not love you, but I can't help myself. It's kind of the same.
I hate it, but we eat it up.
But we eat it up.
I know. My growing brain, I'm so unfortunate. It's grown. But even like a guy on Hinge was like, hold out on you versus the 7 other women in my inbox. And I was like, you're not like other girls me? Fuck you.
Yeah. But on some level, we want to be chosen.
Oh,
right?
There was like that initial like, inside.
So, Mr. Bennet, as we've alluded to, we find him hilarious. Darcy does not. But really what it's doing is it is hiding his humor, although is seen very positively by Elizabeth, disguises his lack of engagement with his family and how much he has not been a parent or support to his wife and children.
Yep. And then you have someone like Mrs. Bennet, who is another prime example of how class shapes behavior. She is not a gentleman's daughter. She married up. She managed to marry a man who is above her class and her station. And it shows that she wasn't able to adapt to that station. So her social class of probably having been worried that she didn't have money to inherit. We know that she did not have a good dowry. She understands the need to get married and the need to marry up. So, of course, that is going to shape her behavior.
Right. And, she always talks about her nerves. It's portrayed as being funny, but she's anxious.
Yeah.
She has anxiety.
Yep.
And then Lydia. What Lydia represents as a character is how choosing to have social blindness, to not be aware of what the social norms are, to understand how to act in society comes with consequences. And so Lydia, who is never curbed, never taught better, has to live with the consequences of her parents failing her.
She also kind of exposes the social norm and the reason why you don't have all 5 sisters out at once. Because even Lady Catherine goes, out? All 5 sisters out at once? Without a governess? And, and Lady Catherine's a bitch, but she also makes a good point. And Elizabeth tries to defend this, saying, it's unfair for the younger sisters to not have fun when just because the older ones aren't married. And it's like, well, or the younger ones are too young. And, you can't have everyone running amok when, you can't focus on them. It is during that time, the marriage market, it was very much like you have to have your focus and your attention on this one thing, on this daughter, and rather than letting all of them out at once. So I think that Lydia also shows that some of these criticisms that Lady Catherine might have had or that other people might have had were for a good reason.
Even if Elizabeth sees it as unjust. And me as a modern person sees it as unjust. But actually, that's common sense.
It's like, maybe we don't let the child out. I was talking to a friend and she was like, well, it was normal for a 15-year-old to be out. And I think you and I were talking about this on a different episode. And it's like, yeah, but it also wasn't normal for a 15-year-old to get married.
Right.
It wasn't impossible, but you weren't expected to get married at 15.
Yeah, and I think even if weren't you saying even if you got married, you weren't expected to have sex?
Oh, that was like even older than this, like circa King and Queen's Renaissance time. But for this time period, it was something where like 20 was a good age to get married. You weren't like Charlotte's 26 and she's considered a spinster. Yes, but like at 20 and 21, Jane and Elizabeth are not considered spinsters. So like think of that, guys.
Right.
You know, there's a sweet spot here, and you know, no one at one point says you guys better hurry up and get married or no one's going to want you.
Right. Right,
you know,
right.
Because there's still time for them.
Right, exactly. They aren't Charlotte Lucas, who's going on 27.
Yeah. And Georgiana, who's roughly around the same age as Lydia, is not out in society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just keeping that in mind. So who truly sees the others? No one has one person. There's no one character that sees everyone perfectly. You really have to interpret it from different perspectives, especially since we're in Elizabeth's point of view. And, you know, we're so busy relying on her and, you know, we can't even trust her. The fool believed Wickham. Even when Jane at one point says, hey, should we be like worried that he's admitting something to you so openly initially? And she's like, shh, sister, you're asking questions that I don't want to think about.
It's fine.
It's called a friend DA, okay?
Even though we just met. I am either very good about not saying anything to anyone or like a few drinks are in me and I'm like, let's talk about our entire life story. And let me tell you about my best friend, Amy.
Like, honestly, yes, that is the majority of where my conversations go to. Ask me how many of my Hinge conversations have already mentioned you.
Oh my God, really?
Only one so far. And there's like 5 guys there.
I'm impressed. Other than saying I do a podcast with my best friend, they don't need to know anything about me.
That's bullshit. You are the light of my life.
They've got competition.
They do. It's like she changes my car batteries.
What can you do?
What can you do?
Screaming, crying, commercial break. Now we're going into segment 5. We're going to touch on some foundational themes that we'll get into in more depth next week. But this is just a good taster before we wrap up today's episode. One of the really important themes, I think, from a modern person's perspective is the role of women in society. What is the woman's role other than getting married? Do women have a role other than getting married? And that's something that is explored pretty in depth, I would say, in Pride and Prejudice, because some people view only their role in society to be married, right? It's the only good they'll do for their family, but there are plenty of others who are just like, it's just a thing I have to do. There's more to me than this.
Yeah, or like with Elizabeth, she'll only be swayed to marriage with the deepest kind of love, but she also doesn't have like a backup plan. You know, she's not going to be like, I'm going to go travel the world if that doesn't happen.
Right. And love's not guaranteed, especially in this climate.
Yeah, in this economy.
You also have misaligned virtues. And what do we mean by that? Everybody claims they are good at something or virtuous in a certain way that is not correct. And sometimes they accuse other people, like Elizabeth accusing Jane, of being blind, when in fact, Elizabeth is the one who is blind. Jane actually is the one who's like, should we trust Wickham?
Yeah, and it's funny because Elizabeth keeps being like, you'll see the good in anyone. You don't want to see the truth. And then at the end, she's like, shit. Maybe that was me too.
Yeah.
You also have a lot of social performance going on. And then sometimes the lack of performance. Like, I think Mr. Collins is a great example of someone who is all performance in the beginning, but also is so transparent. You know, even the way that he tells Elizabeth that I'm so madly in love with you. I want to propose for you. My feelings are so explosive. But then he'll be like, and my reasons for marrying are the following things. And
it has nothing to do with love.
Absolutely. It is unfortunate, but he is that perfect example of like ridiculous where you do have this like this social performance, but he is so see-through at the same time. Like the way that he kisses Lady Catherine de Bourgh, the way that he kisses Lady Catherine de Bourgh's ass constantly, and Elizabeth asks him, or she's not even there, and he's just talking about how great she is and what he says to her, and Elizabeth's like, do you rehearse these or does this come to you spur of the moment? And he was like, a little bit of both. Thank you for asking. Mr. Collins is a fantastic example of social performance because Austen shows his performance being so see-through, and we can see what's actually happening.
The same goes for Miss Bingley. So
Yeah.
Mr. Bingley's sister, who is infatuated with Darcy, who judges Elizabeth, her niceties to Jane are not sincere, and it becomes obvious with time.
Yeah.
And even by the end of the novel, even Jane sees it.
Yeah.
That, oh, you're only writing to me because I am now betrothed to your brother.
Yep.
Like, there's no reason. You stopped engaging with me the second that you could. Mrs. Bingley is all performance until Darcy and Elizabeth are together, and she's like, well, I guess I can't perform anymore. So there's no point.
Before I go into marriage as a social contract, I want to also point out the fact that, you know, you have all of this social arrangements, class and everything, but Bingley's money comes from trade, and yet Darcy's really good friends with him. It does show a little bit of, one, money can get you places, but two, Darcy isn't as concerned, or like, he thinks Bingley can get away with marrying one of the Bennet sisters more than he can get away with it, even though he stops his friend. I was more kind to my friend than I was to myself. And it's a hint of showing his own character of, here he is spending the summer with his best friend who is in trade, you know, like it just like he's not willing to completely exclude people just because of class.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that gets lost easily. Darcy is of a noble line, which is old money, versus Bingley, who is in trade.
New money.
Merchant level new money.
Yep. Just wanted to call that out before we go into marriage as a social contract. It's such a great example between how men and women both need each other in the social society at this time. You have Charlotte Lucas, who says, quote, happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance. Charlotte knows that that marriage is kind of her only option, that she's going to be a burden on her parents, that she needs to be out of the house. Like, happiness is only what you decide it. I also referenced her a lot in the female alteration of like someone who's like, I am going to think this way so I can survive. And then, and she needs Mr. Collins.
Yeah. Elizabeth is appalled at Charlotte's behavior, but I really admire Charlotte for being like, here's a man who was just turned down. He obviously liked Jane and then liked Elizabeth, so he doesn't actually care. I'm going to take advantage of this because this may be my only chance in life.
And she'll take care of the Bennets whenever Mr. Bennet dies. Like, she's not going to go and kick him out. Like, this is the best second or fourth or fifth, like, if you wanted to go through all the sisters. But you have all of this in contrast to Mr. Wickham, who needs to marry someone for money as well. Like, there was a girl that he was, Miss King, and that he was like talking to someone who had just inherited £10,000, and now she's rich and now he's in love with her and he's courting her, but then her family was smart and whisked her away. But at one point, like, someone says, hey, handsome men need money too. Like, they need something to survive off of. And Wickham is a great example of that. Like, unfortunately, he tries to hustle women left and right out of it. What I do like about this and what Austen does is that women who need marriages for safety are not demonized. Men who are trying to take advantage of women for their own finances are demonized. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too.
It's like she has a lot more sympathy for women.
Oh, yeah.
And like seeing Charlotte, and she very much condemns Mr. Wickham because she very easily could have had another young man who needed money but was like a good stand-up guy.
Exactly. We're going to move now into segment 6, which is our last segment of the episode. And what we're hoping to achieve here is to prepare you for episode 2, next week's episode. So what tools do you need to have in order to successfully find nuance in the story of Pride and Prejudice? Number 1, Elizabeth is not always right. I know it's really hard because I so identify with her assumptions that she makes.
Yep.
But they are that. They are assumptions.
Another way you can say this is unreliable narrator.
Unreliable.
Number 2, that the letter reset the narrative and it changed the entire perception of this book. That letter is more than just a romantic moment of feelings being declared, of like the truths come out. It's more than that. The entire narrative, the way that we view every single character afterwards, is changed after that letter. And that letter is truly the marker of, in the middle of the book, of like before and after, because her glasses, aka our glasses as the reader, is different and we're going to be viewing everything differently.
And finally, watch for irony, aka take everything with a grain of salt. The fact that the opening line is, "It is a truth universally acknowledged." This is not an objective truth that single man must be in want of a wife. That's
a single man of good fortune.
Oh, yes, must be in want of a wife. There's plenty of bachelors who are perennial bachelors out there. And so if you know to view this through the lens of satire rather than sincerity, you're going to pick up a lot more.
Yeah, the whole thing is very satirical. It's already, with that line, it is setting the tone. I feel like setting the tone that marriage should not be taken seriously. I think that, you know, the marriage ends up becoming a large part of the plot. It's like what a lot of the characters strive towards. It's part of the riffs, it's plot points. But the fact that the first line, "A truth universally acknowledges, a man of good fortune must be in want of a wife," it's talking about marriage, and it's coming at it with complete satire. It should show that marriage is not something to be taken seriously. Like, I mean, it is taken seriously, but like, there's going to be more to this than just marriage. It's almost saying that, hey, this concept of marriage, it's going to be a little bit of a satire. There's going to be more to it. And it's just really funny that, like, you know, we love that first line, but we also, as readers, kind of like glaze past it and we go, no, this is about love and marriage.
Right. And we never really stopped to think about the fact that who are the first characters we're introduced to? Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. And so
who are in a failed marriage in many
who are in a failed marriage, and Mrs. Bennett is focused on her daughter's marrying. In some ways, this first line is Mrs. Bennett talking, right? It's because the opposite is probably more universally true. A woman in lesser financial means must be in want of a rich husband. Like, that's more accurate in a lot of ways.
It's more accurate. I mean, yes, it's Mrs. Bennett's point of view, and it's even more so her point of view because wasn't that her experience? Mr. Bennett was a man of good fortune to her. You know, good fortune is all in comparison to who you want to compare it next to. And her experience was a young man of good fortune was in want of a wife, and she became that wife. This is her reality. Why is everyone making her seem like she's crazy?
Right.
You know, so all of this is really what we want everyone to walk away with. This is that this is the beginning of literacy, is understanding the text in the most basic sense. What was happening during this time? The Napoleonic Wars, the Regency era. You kind of have like a false king that's going on. You have a prince regent who's also partying it up. And it's like this weird time frame where the prince regent was in charge, but he also was like very much a partier, and you'd have more access to the prince regent than you would the king. Granted, it's not like anyone had like casual access to it. You also have this time period where marriage is important, but also is happiness for some people, but maybe not all people. I mean, there's a lot of things that when we strip away this concept that it's about love and that it's a romance, you can have a better foundation for what the story actually is, and then that's how you get literacy.
And so some questions to leave you with to think about before we get to episode 2. If Pride and Prejudice is less about romance and more about learning to see reality or see things for what they are, what must be sacrificed to achieve that understanding? Is it pride? Is it social identity? Is it your prejudice, your bias? Or the comforting illusion that we already know the truth, that my life circumstance makes me right.
That we think we know the truth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, can't wait for next week. Let's wrap this up. Thank you for listening to this episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. Next week, we'll continue looking at Pride and Prejudice and move into an academic analysis.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps other readers find us. And of course, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode. Share your comments through our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com, and we might feature your feedback in a future mini episode or in a Patreon exclusive episode.
For merch and more ways to support the show, head to booktalkforbooktalk.com. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. And don't forget to join us by subscribing to the subtextsocietyjournal.substack.com to get more insights into the romantasy and romance world. Bye!
Bye.
I have the most complicated period ritual just to make sure that I am comfortable and I don't have any accidents. And at the end of the day, I'm not comfortable and I still have accidents. I am so happy that I have finally made the jump to Knix because I can sleep so much easier when I'm on my period now with their leak-proof underwear.
Knix, that's Knix, has completely changed how I feel about my period. Their leak-proof technology not only looks and feels like regular underwear, but it washes like regular underwear, and they have a range of absorbencies because if you're like me, my period keeps changing. The heavier days are heavier and shorter, and I don't know what to expect. With up to 6 super tampons worth of absorption, I'm totally covered.
Plus, Knix has patent-bonded edges to prevent side leaks. We all know about those dreaded side leaks. They are the bane of my existence. Their underwear is buttery soft, stretchy fabric and cuts like thong, bikini, boy shorts, high rise, and more. Their thong has seriously changed everything. I wear that on my last day of the period where I just need something for the gym. Pad doesn't feel comfortable. Tampons don't feel comfortable. Knix, game changer.
I swear by their boy shorts for overnight on heavy nights. I even wore those boy shorts under my dress during my engagement photo shoot. They were lifesavers. Head to Knix.com and you'll see why we love Knix. Use code BookTalk, that's BOOKTALK, for 15% off your order.
Get leak-proof undies, amazing bras, and more. That's KNIX.com using code BookTalk, BOOKTALK. Knix.com. Struggling to find the right metabolic wellness support, even when you're doing everything right, has been one of the most frustrating things for me in my health journey.
I've tried other metabolic wellness support providers, and I often feel rejected rather than supported by the process.
That's because Brello is focused on long-term health, longevity, and performance, not quick fixes.
Brello is designed for people who want a more sustainable approach to their metabolic wellness support. Their support helps you focus on habits, education, and structure alongside provider oversight.
Getting my GLP-1 through Brello has been so easy. They make it so effortless, and they provide all the support I need through their app.
Their app is one of a kind in my book because it allows you to track progress, manage reminders, and stay on top of renewals. And if you're like me, managing the renewals is the hardest part.
Everything is managed online, making it easier to stay consistent over time, and medications are delivered to your door. They're so transparent with their pricing with one flat monthly cost. Go to BrelloHealth.com to see if you qualify and explore their GLP-1 plans, starting at $133 per month for your first 3 months, plus access to their app, community, and wellness classes. That's BRELLO health.com.
Any information provided is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional medical consultation, diagnosis, or treatment. All patients must consult with a healthcare provider prior to the prescription or dispensing of any medication, which will be done only pursuant to a valid prescription. Compounded drug products are not FDA approved, and the FDA does not evaluate their safety, effectiveness, or quality. Patients are encouraged to discuss the risks, benefits, and appropriateness of any medications, including compounded products, with their healthcare provider before use.